Thank you, Funchen. Welcome to everybody. That's right. You remuted me. Folks, we practiced this and then we had tech troubles because that's how it goes. But anyway, good morning. You may notice we have fewer chairs than in sanctuary if you're comfortable where you are, but just reminding each other that if you'd rather sit away from other people, we've got some empty chairs, COVID-wise. I know in our survey, everybody said they were vaccinated. So that's great. So hi, my name is Claire Wagner. I serve on the communications team in more roles than usual because of the pandemic and having to live stream, etc. Our minister is Reverend Mitra Jafarzadeh. She is off today, and I'm happy to be with you. Borrowing words from Reverend Mitra. We hope to help you exercise your mind today, to fill your spirit, to lift your heart to the common blessing that surprise and renew our human being. We are proud to be a welcoming congregation. We celebrate the racial, economic, religious, cultural, physical ability, sexual orientation, and gender diversity of our members and visitors, young and old. Just checking one setting, friends. Great. And a special welcome to any visitors here with us this morning. If you have electronic devices, please mute them at this time. I do have some announcements. This month, we resume our regular Split the Plate offerings to support the good work of our local agencies, starting with Dohn Community High School. Our outreach team member, Howard Tolley, will introduce a guest speaker from Dohn. We started collecting food again for churches active in Northside, Kane, but I think we haven't coordinated delivering it. So if anybody is able to take it to Northside where Kane is, please let Anjali Dutt, our social justice chair, know. The Walk Out of Darkness is October 10th, a Sunday. Nicole Stanforth and Bridget Shu will be, she's behind the screen. Pay attention to the woman behind the screen, not like in Wizard of Oz. We'll be signing up folks who might want to walk with our team, Side with Love 2021. And today's service includes a civics lesson. So first timers, please know this is not our normal flow or maybe normal content. And we're also in this hall because I have some slides I want to show you, and it's helpful to see them. In a matter of 2 to 3 months, we'll have a screen in the sanctuary where we can be able to do that. And now, Paula Houston, our worship associate, will lead our chalice lighting.
we light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind. This is the church of the helping hands. This is the church of the loving heart. Together, we care for the church and each other. And today, we also light 2 candles to remember and honor those lost and those who love them. 20 years ago yesterday, with the terrorist attacks in New York, at the Pentagon, and in a field in Pennsylvania. May the flames be beacons of hope in moments of uncertainty and anxiety. May we be emboldened by the flames, knowing our strength as powerful, united people is rooted in the diverse ways we answer the call to love. Now please join me in a shared affirmation. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands.
During her 2 years with us, intern minister Alice Diebel organized a group of us to support Dohn Community High School. And several of us have continued during this difficult pandemic period. I've been trying to encourage applicants for admission to UC from the school, and one was actually admitted last year. The successor to Oriel Williams, who was our liaison to Dohn, is with us this morning, Lauren Weissman, and she is providing us with weekly descriptions in the e-news about different programs, and we'll say a few words today to persuade you to open your wallets and do a split the plate that will provide some financial support for that institution. If you're writing a check and you don't say anything in the subject line, it will be split 50-50. If you put pledge, 100% of it will go to St. John's. Or if you put Dohn 100%, then Dohn will get the full amount of your check. Similarly, if you go to stjohns.org, community/donate, you can designate Dohn as the recipient organization, either 50-50 or 100%. So thank you for coming.
Thanks, Howard. I'm Lauren Weissman. I'm the development coordinator at Dohn Community High School. So grateful to be here this morning and to meet all of you and for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about Dohn Community High School. Really quick, I guess, I'm sure like many of you, I was reflecting a lot yesterday about where I was 20 years ago on 9/11. I had recently graduated from Miami University and I was out living in Colorado when the Twin Towers were struck. And it was just a very dark moment. You know, a lot of despair, a loss, it seemed like a loss of hope for many and as a country, but we unified, and there was beauty in that moment, and there was beauty in the moments afterwards. And I try to always kind of see the for lack of a better term, the silver lining. And coincidentally, Dohn Community High School this year is celebrating its 20th year. It is a nonprofit charter school, so 20 years for a charter school is unheard of. It's a remarkable feat. And one of the reasons that Dohn, I believe, is so successful and is still here 20 years later is that we use the phrase, we meet the students where they are. The students of Dohn, it's 99% Black and brown, come from single parent homes, and they face a loss of hope in their lives, in their own lives. a lot of these students, because of life circumstances, have a hard time getting through a full day of school. They have to take care of siblings because their parents are working. They might have jobs themselves that they need to get to. And they have just a varied needs. And we have, at this point, in our 20th year, we have 9 campuses. And this year, I believe we are hovering around 1,500 students, which is remarkable. And the programs that we have, like I was just saying, are very varied. We have Young Men's and Young Women's Academy. Our executive director, Ramon Davenport, had the vision to separate the girls and the boys for freshman and sophomore year. And that's done a lot, especially to the Young Women's Academy, just giving them a chance to be comfortable in their own skin and to feel empowered. I'll get back to that in a minute. We also have a program called Keeping Teen Moms in School, which gives the young mothers an opportunity to bring their children to school, we just partnered with a daycare, Learning Grove, so that they can put their kids in a 5-star daycare. We have a fitness academy, Dohn Prep. We just opened a new campus in Hamilton, which is the first outside of the city lines. Anyway, we have a lot of opportunities and varied opportunities to get these kids inspired and to give them the hope that they need to dream of getting their high school diploma. For so many of them, this will be the first in their families to get a high school diploma. So I'm so proud to work for Dohn Community High School, and I'm really excited to see what the next years will bring to these kids. But Dohn Community High School can't do it alone. We can't do it. Most of it is funded by state foundation payments, excuse me, but a lot of the extras come from grants, which is what I'm responsible for, and from private donations from very generous folks like you all. Right now, a current sort of push that I'm making is towards the Young Women's Academy. That program, they have 4 core classes: English, math, science, and history. But they don't have any electives right now. They don't have art, they don't have music, they don't have creative writing. And I truly believe that these students deserve to have creative expression, to have an outlet. They need an outlet so that they're not turning to the streets, so that they're not falling into the dangers of the outside world that's easy for them to do with the rest of their day after school. So I'm trying to push a lot of donations towards the Young Women's Academy currently, but certainly there are needs across the board. Thank you again for having me speak this morning and for the opportunity to meet all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, for the good work that Dohn School does. During service, we share joys and concerns, or joys and sorrows. And it's that time. We pick up a stone and place it in the bowl, and then we'll bless all of them together. I forgot to get the cards in case you have something you'd like to write down. So, let's go like we used to do. If you have something you want to share out loud, come on up here after we've gone through the line. Just wait, and then I'll let you share with others. But otherwise, please come forward. No live joys or concerns, but we have some in the chat. Let me scroll up a little bit. Joetta Pro says she and Kathy had the joy of meeting their new great niece when they visited family in Missouri. Her name is Elizabeth Violet. And Fleischer, who with Joetta is ushering today. So they're doing their streaming duties. I am thinking of a friend who is going to have an acoustic neuroma removed this week. She knows that she will lose her hearing, but is uncertain about other neurologic impairments. I know that we also have had a few congregants have surgery, one a few weeks ago and one this week. Let us offer them our thoughts for healing and warm wishes. Our flame burns as bright for joys as for sorrows. May our spirits be joined in support of those joys and concerns expressed or held silently, and may we remember our unity. Peng Chang will please play for us now for Offertory. And we have the plate up here. If you would please come up if you have something to give this week. Thank you.
And now we have a reading.
Claire, we need to unmute the tablet. Bridget, you'll need to let Claire know to unmute the tablet, please.
Thank you, Paula. I apologize for people at home. I forgot to unmute. I don't know what might have picked up your sound, but it was a lovely poem. Give me 1 sec. Okay, all right, I think I'm there. How many times when you were a youngster did the rambunctious kid in class do something misguided, like continue to interrupt the teacher or repeatedly push someone on the playground? And the rest of the class suffered a common consequence, like no outdoor recess the next day. The teacher, in my case, generally a nun, would lay the blame for the decision entirely on the misbehaved child instead of on her choice of broad-based punishment. Of course, guilt was a part of my religious education, growing up at St. Augustine Catholic Church and school in suburban Milwaukee. That's not fair, we would protest. But fairness didn't seem to be relevant to the point of trying to force a lesson learned. The ideal of fairness has always been one to which I remain alert, even sometimes to my detriment. And I embrace objectivity as a path to fairness. Subjectivity, by its nature, is influenced by individuals' life experiences and sense of understanding, and therefore difficult to be used in an argument to tip the scale of fairness. Or so I believe. Once, when I was president of the Coleraine Middle School PTA, I think I erred in sticking to an objective argument. The PTA member in charge of reading an inspiration or devotion at the start of meetings, it's kind of like written into the PTA guidelines for meetings, clung to using Christian prayers. I was gentle, but I let her know, and I let the board know when it didn't work the first time, that in a public school, we needed to not represent a particular belief system in the devotion. I purposely did not tell the board that I was an active member of a congregation because I thought that the argument should stand on its own. Some of the members got it from the beginning, but others refused the argument because surely most of the parents are Christian. Our UU ideals do welcome people who process things differently, right? Whether you use logic or emotions to decide something, whether you're ENTJ or ISFP on the Myers-Briggs scale, we welcome you. But I overestimated their ability to understand that the Constitution protected others' religious rights as much as theirs. I thought I would have swayed their trust in me and thus my argument if they knew I was a churchgoer. Come on, how many times has it been really convenient for you, whether or not you're a humanist or a neo-pagan or just a UU, to say you have a church? Right? People relate to that, especially Saints, Johns. Wow. Right? Patrick's hand is up. Folks, I said I grew up at St. Augustine, right? Anyway, but I wanted to argue in what I thought was a fair and objective manner, which means I had to talk individually with that board member again when she read a Christian prayer. Fairness as an ideal has become more complex with every observation on social undertakings, income tax rules and exceptions, the physical and mental capacity of people to be expected to follow societal rules, poverty, war, your medical premiums being more than somebody else's, mandatory vaccinations, the extraction of supporting details under all those concepts of fairness go in numerous directions and have been debated in so many outlets, still without universal agreement. It was so much easier to decide what was fair when we were 9. Still, I would like to think that when the data exists to draw a balanced, numerically rationed outline, and when Ohio's Constitution mandates that we follow set rules to get there, we can arrive at a standard that provides fair voting districts as near as possible before our next elections. And so I became involved with Fair Districts Ohio through the League of Women Voters Cincinnati area. I know we have some other League of Women Voters in St. John's. The Fair Districts ideals align well with UU's principles conveying justice, equity, and the democratic process at large. So I would like to update you now on how Ohio came to an anti-gerrymandering process and let you know what you can do to support the most fair outcome that will make as many votes as possible count. Let me switch to some slides. Yay. Okay. Okay. Well, this is my first slide. Fighting gerrymandering has been a priority for League of Women Voters and Common Cause Ohio for decades. You can see in this list of the rest of the coalition includes the Ohio Council of Churches, of which UJO is an observing member. There we go. Whoa. Every 10 years, or every decennial census, as they call it, we make new maps for Ohio congressional districts and for the Ohio General Assembly. In 2015, we voted to reform the districts for state legislature. And in 2018, we voted to redefine the congressional districts in a non-gerrymandered way. The reforms passed in all 88 counties in Ohio. And as you can see, the numbers up here, 71% and 74.8% are terrific majorities. But it falls on, so the census came out, right? We did it in 2020, it was delayed coming out, but the way that the rules were written, this is to take effect for the 2022 elections. And so that's why folks are involved now on awareness. A little bit of civics, like I mentioned. Bridget, thank you very much. The US House of Representatives has 435 members, distributed proportionately according to population in the 50 states. Each state has at least one. The process of distributing the remaining 385 is called apportionment. In 1790, each member of Congress represented about 34,000 people. Over the last decade, it was about 711,000 people. Under the new congressional districts, the ones that we're writing up right now and making new maps for, it will be 761,000 residents. You may have seen in the news, Ohio lost 1 seat. We went from 16 to 15 because even though the population grew, it grew much more slowly than many other states. We do have in the state 99 representatives and 33 senators per the Ohio Constitution. No apportionment is required there. So redistricting is meant to give each district roughly the same number of residents for US congressional districts, state house and senate districts, and some municipal districts use it as well. In the 1960s, we're pretty much familiar with the Voting Rights Act, but also several rules were passed in support of equal populations in districts. It's called the principle of population equality. However, oops, there we go. There, go to the cats and dogs, the green and yellow. Back up. Thank you. I realize it may not be that easy to see. At home has an advantage today because it's full screen. This is how gerrymandering can happen, how districts can be redrawn. It matters, as you might imagine, who draws the districts and if there are rules. Some states don't even have the rules that we at least voted to have. So those drawing lines can pack, that's a verb in this, which means wasting extra votes from their opponents into districts that they are forfeiting to the opposition, or they can crack the opposition and put an insignificant number of them, of those voters in each district so that they will never win. Packing and cracking are mainstays of partisan gerrymandering. They negate the value of a person's vote. In this example, you'll at least see by color, districts could be drawn to give perfect representation with 20 cats and 30 dogs down that first column, divvied up in the second column. What's fair, right? There's 30 dogs and 20 cats, so 3 dog districts, 2 cat districts. Or you can draw the lines the other way. You get 5 dog districts and no cat districts because there's a majority of dogs in every district. That's this one. Or the cats could take over. And that would be packing dogs into 2 districts and ending up winning districts for themselves. You can see the fat black lines, right? That where at least they get some districts in which they're majority. Both are examples of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering, a lot of you know history, has been with us since the history of the Republic. For the last half of the 1800s, the party in power in Ohio legislature secured its political advantage by gerrymandering. From 1878 to 1892, so 14 years, the state was reapportioned 6 times, depending on who was in charge. You know what, I'm gonna close my transcript here because it's blocking me. Okay, thanks. And some of you know when Black men won the right to vote after the Civil War, gerrymandering increased, especially in the South. And it's become easier to do with stronger, faster, more sophisticated technology, allowing the maps to be drawn. Districts become uncompetitive, and that leads to other troubles. Voter apathy, primaries becoming the real election, radicalization of candidates, because if you know you're getting voted in, go with what you want to do, and the inability of lawmakers to compromise. So some more examples. Thank you. Our current congressional map in 2011, so that would have been after the 2010 census, Ohio map makers designed the congressional map to guarantee 12 Republican seats and 4 Democratic seats. Even during wave years of Republican or Democratic voters, we've seen it remain 12 and 4. That, of course, as I mentioned, hurts all voters because when lawmakers know they're assured to win, they don't have to listen to the voters in their district. They're in. They know that, that they've won, and the voter voice becomes muted. You can see odd shaped, we're gonna go to, oh, it does show here. This duck on the top is Representative Jim Jordan's district.
Wow.
This is in kind of this lavender here.
Oh, okay.
And the bottom one, is that the one that goes around? Yes. Yeah, so Columbus is here. Little bits of Franklin went into this to pull them out of this little pale yellow bit. This is Franklin County. And wrap it with more conservative districts and other counties. So we get what you might think are predictable results.
Look at our district.
Oh, we'll get there. Pardon me, I need a sip of water. I know many of you know this, but a lot of it was eye-opening to me. There we go. Numerically, Ohio does have a majority of Republican voters. Pretty much for since 2010, 55% Republican voters, 45% Democratic voters showing up. However, the results by election in Congress have been 75% of Republicans winning and 25% Democrats. And on the right is the state house elections. Same number, of course, of people, right? 55, 45, but 64% of districts were going to Republicans. Again, in the past, Democrats have done it, but in recent years, we know who's been doing the drawing. This is a quick picture of what's been called the snake on the lake. Representative Marcy Kaptur has the unfortunate job of representing folks all the way across from Toledo to Cleveland, picking little neighborhoods out of counties along the way to diminish the capacity. Given that a congressional district is about 711,000 people, because that hasn't changed yet, none of these communities needed to be split. All are small enough to be fully encompassed into a single congressional district. This is an example of packing. Now, as Professor Tolley has mentioned, here's our district. A lot of you know this. In 2010, Hamilton County had 802,000 residents. So more than a congressional district population of 711,000. So it will need to be split, but not as it is here. District 1 is a classic case, of cracking the most democratic areas of Cincinnati and combining it with the very conservative Warren County, the rectangle in the upper right. Prior to 2011, District 1 was competitive. Some of you remember in 2008, a Democrat won the district. Then in 2011, Warren County was added to the district, and it's been Republican since then. So while many of us work for access to voting, I know many of us did in the last election, for early voting, voting by mail, et cetera, consider that those efforts are negated if the people's votes, once they get there, really don't matter because we've packed so many of the opposition's votes into the same district. There's a picture of Xavier's basketball court up here because it's in District 1, but the parking lot is in District 2. And this funny little thing on the bottom is on North Bend Road in District 1, but it's surrounded by District 2 on all three sides. People, I drove by it. I'm like, well, who lives there? It's a modest little house with junk in the yard. I don't know why it was drawn that way. So now we're up to 830,600 people in Hamilton County per the new data. So with 761,000, the new rough population for a district will still need to be split, but there are rules, and you'll see that soon, that mean most of the county needs to be one unit, one district. Real quick, we saw Franklin before, Franklin County, that's Columbus's county, District 15. It was competitive before 2011 also, and had 3 counties. On the left there, you can see that. Now, the Republican map makers had added communities from 10 other counties. So the district reaches across parts of 13 counties, 9 of which lean Republican. That dilutes the vote of Democrats in Franklin County. All right, it's going to get a little bit better. We're going to go to where are we now? Nothing's changed yet, right? We're in the process. And as I mentioned, some states don't even have these rules. When we voted them in 2015 and 2018, they went into the state constitution. And so they need to be followed. Here's some of the rules covering both state and congressional districts. They must be compact and contiguous. There are rules for keeping counties, cities, and townships whole when possible. Like I said, the bigger counties are going to need to be split. There need to be public hearings. The Ohio Constitution requires 3 public hearings for state legislative maps after a plan or proposed map is introduced. 2 hearings are required after congressional maps are introduced for consideration. That is not a lot of hearings. There are very many groups like League of Women Voters and Common Cause and others who've been asking for more hearings. We were asking for them before the census data was available because people needed just to know what was coming, but it didn't happen. And we've been asking for virtual hearings. We are unaware of any yet that are set up. However, on, oh, I have it at the end. The Ohio News Channel online does have previous hearings recorded, so you can go there. I'll share resources with you later. Here are some more rules for Ohio. Each Ohio Senate district must consist of 3 continuous House districts. Remember, we've got 99 House and 33 Senate. There's an anti-gerrymandering rule that they must attempt to follow, is the wording. No plan shall be drawn to favor or disfavor a political party. Those of you who read the news this week, 2 days ago on Thursday, or 3 days ago, the legislature put out a map without having said a word about how close they were to doing it. And it very much maintains the majority district power that had existed before. And literally there was a quote that said, oh no, we didn't look at any of the politics. We were just drawing up numbers. Just thought I'd let you know. But this says they have to not favor another, and it does favor based on comparing to the actual population. And there's a representational fairness rule, which is unique. I think there's an error in one of the words. So I'm going to read the word favor to be favoring. I think that makes it a sentence. The statewide proportion of districts whose voters, based on statewide, state and federal partisan general election results during the last 10 years, favoring each political party, must correspond closely to the statewide preferences of the voters of Ohio. League of Women Voters and Fair Districts Ohio, I'm not sure that was followed in the first map iteration that came out. So in early August, the Ohio Redistricting Commission was named. It was set to be 7 people from the beginning, and 5 of them were set in the rules. The governor, state auditor, secretary of state, House Speaker, Senate President, and then they got to each choose somebody. So the 2 Dems who were added were Ohio House Minority Leader Emily Sykes and her dad, State Senator Vernon Sykes. All right, more rules for congressional districts. There, and I don't have the details, this is a summary. They include bipartisan map making, limits on splitting municipalities, transparency, and public participation. They're not perfect rules, we know that, but they are guardrails. And we are very interested in the transparency and the public participation. This gets more specific for congressional districts. The number of splits permitted is not the number of splits required, okay? So this is how it goes now in the Constitution. Of our 88 counties, at least 65 must be contained entirely within one district. Up to 18 may be split, not more than once, meaning 2 districts, and up to 5 may be split not more than twice for 3 districts. Some of the splitting rules are complicated, but I'll have a website too if you want to see the briefing that was supplied to the Legislative Commission and to the members.
Does it say which 5 counties those are?
No, as you might suspect, I think Cuyahoga, Franklin, and Hamilton doesn't need to be, but those 2 are pretty big. So yeah, I don't think that's identified in the rules. Here's the process. Remember this from school, drawing diagrams like this? Stage 1, General Assembly to pass 10-year map by 60% of all members and 50% vote of the 2 largest parties. We know that to be Republican and Democratic by September 30. Again, this is a congressional deadline. If it yes, gets signed. If no, step 2. The commission must pass a 10-year vote by a 4/7. Oh, I'm sorry, it goes from the legislature to the commission then, by a 4/7 vote, including the 2 members of each 2 largest parties, and we only have 2 Democrats on that. If that doesn't get approved, stage 3, General Assembly, back to them, to pass a 10-year plan by 60% of all members and only 1/3 vote of the 2 largest parties by November 30, and it adds a month each time. And then the step we don't want to get to, but it's written in, if those are not approved, stage 4 is the General Assembly passes only a 4-year plan by a simple majority of all members. No bipartisan agreement required. So you don't need to be an expert. The main points here are bipartisan requirements, public participation, some of the additional standards that are, I think there might be an asterisk here in step 4, stricter requirements than the other stages protecting against drawing district lines to favor or disfavor political parties, candidates, and incumbents, compactness, and also an explanation of how this plan is complying with certain sections. So the census data was delayed, excuse me. We didn't get it till August instead of mid-August instead of March. Ohio University had been tasked ahead of time to prepare the mapping data. And it's unclear how and when it's going to get there. I scoured their website and didn't find anything more updated than what the news was reporting in August about basic numbers. So I'm sorry I don't have an update on that for you. So September 1st deadline was missed. September 15th is in 3 days, right? And there were 2 hearings called. The minimum required notice is 24 hours. And so that's what we got. There were 2 hearings last Thursday. There's one today at 4 o'clock in Dayton. You can log in virtually if you want, or try and drive up there. And the other 2 are in, I think, Cleveland and Columbus, Monday, Tuesday. And then instead of a virtual one, they set up a remote hearing. And they said, you have to go to Marietta, and then we'll remote you into the Columbus State House. I'm at the pulpit, I won't say anymore. However, you can participate. I'll share links. Actually, probably the best thing is for me to send emails to whoever's interested. Participating in the public hearings is our important opportunity to influence this process, to put equity and voter justice into the equation. You can provide testimony written. You can provide testimony in person if you want to get up to one of the sites and submit it and read it out loud. Fair Districts had a mapping contest, and they're still taking applications, but there's also a link to show maps that other people have used this software to create their ideas, and they're all supposed to be submitted and considered by the commission and the legislature. So these are some of the links I can get out. Oh, I think I mentioned, this is what I mentioned before. Analysis shows it retains 67% majority rule. And they do have their own website now. You can email the Ohio Redistricting Commission. There's a link for a petition to the official map makers. I wrote a letter to the editor in August to my weekly paper. I don't know if it was run, but this really is happening. Things are changing every 3 days. So it's important to pay attention. The Inquirer's doing a decent job, but not, I don't think a complete job like some of the Columbus media keeping up with all of this. I brought with me today some postcards. They're on the back table, and there's an instruction sheet with addresses and notes that you might want to add to them if you're interested in sending postcards to members of the district redistricting commission or your legislature, just to let them know you're interested. I have 4 signs back there. That's all I could snag, but anybody's welcome to take a sign. And I just want to remind you, don't be afraid if anybody asks you about it to say, you know, I think neighbor, you voted for this too, because it was nearly 3/4% approved by Ohio voters. And there's a special day, September 20, does it say 21? Yeah, September 21 is called Fair Maps Day. It is really just a positive public demonstration at the State House. You can sign up online to join there if you like. Oops. That was just a picture. There's two different postcards. I've got the black ones in rubber bands of 5 and the newer ones in 2. You can send out as many as you want, but they're just in the back like that. That's what the sign looks like. The main website to remember is fairdistrictsohio.org. It has links to many of these other resources for you. If you've got time, try and meet with the legislator just to let them know that you're interested. There are other groups advocating for transparent and fair processes for redistricting. One is called All on the Line. Another is Equal Districts Coalition and the Ohio Citizens Redistricting Commission. I haven't studied all of them, but I just want you to know Fair Districts Ohio, because Common Cause and League of Women Voters are involved, is maintaining nonpartisan messaging throughout its work. So I will remind you that Mitra often encourages us to unite our theological and societal mores with actions. So that leads you to, if you're inclined to act on what you know, to grab some of those postcards and an instruction sheet, or perhaps a sign, and be confident that you are part of the majority of Ohioans who wanted this change to create fair districts. Let's move to benediction. I'll stay afterwards if people have questions. Stop my share. Do you mind standing up? We used to hold hands, but let's not, just COVID-wise. Hold on to what is good, even if it is a handful of earth. Hold on to what you believe, even if it is a tree which stands by itself. Hold on to what you must do, even if it is a long way from here. Hold on to life, even when it is easier letting go. Hold on to my hand, even when I have gone away from you. Thank you all for coming. Have a terrific week.
Hi, everybody. If you're going to hang around for coffee hour, we'll look forward to visiting with you. We'll take a quick break and then gather back together. All right. Hey, Cliff. So what kind of cookies are you having now, Cliff?
No cookies now. Already had breakfast, finally. Now I have to get ready to go out inside and paint the wood on the screened-in porch, which has no screens on right now. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Having been to your house, I remember a porch, but I don't remember a screened-in porch.
Yeah, it's off the kitchen.
Oh, okay. All right.
So while the screens are out, it's time to paint the wood that you can't paint when the screens are in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Got most of it done yesterday.
Well, that's good. Hi, Bridget. Oh, she probably can't hear me there. Hi, Bridget. She was our Zoom producer today.
I wanted to throw something into the conversation. Can you hear me?
Sure.
It's me. Yeah. I had wondered about with singing for Church Dersheimer's event, whether we might all want to get the black N95 masks for singers with the inserts as a safety measure, because I thought it might draw a number of people to want to sing that day.
I think you should speak with Reverend Mitra, because I think she's working on some kind of singing mask. I don't know what the details are on that. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to see a mask that can sing.
Oh, Claire.
Thanks, Joette and Ann.
Yeah, thank you, Claire.
There.
Good job on the presentation. Anybody
There's
ask?
so much noise in here. I'm not going to hear you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to tell her if anybody asks, the League of Women Voters of Kentucky is the source of all current info for our bluegrass state, where we have no influence over the process, no requirement for any of this. So, you know, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad.
Well, Kentucky went from a state that was entirely Democrat run for years and years and years and years to a changeover in the last 10 years, whatever.
Yeah, well. Yeah.
Changing demographics.
But the process, whichever party is in power, the process should be fair. And it wasn't fair under the Democrats, and it's not going to be fair under the Republicans in Kentucky. And that's the sad part, is that it's being done in the back room and with all kinds of, we don't have lakes, so it's not a lake snake, but we'll have similar. So people look out for their own interests. That's what we see a lot of, isn't it? Instead of looking out for the interests of their constituents and the greater good.
I think maybe Bush in his talk about 9/11 said something about every disagreement doesn't have to turn into an argument.
Yeah.
And I thought that was profound.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Hi, Pete. Good to see you. What's your shirt say? I can't quite read it.
Oh, it's just about old accountants losing their balance.
Are you an accountant?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, well, that's a good line. Old accountants never die, they just lose their balance. Huh? Shoot. Let's see, you live on the Ohio side. Was this news? Was this good information and news for you, Pete?
It was good information. I didn't realize that there was, I didn't remember that that there was a ballot initiative in the past.
Yeah.
I assumed from the signs that this was the Democrats trying to convince the Republicans to do something for the good of the whole state.
Yeah.
But I was wrong.
Yeah. 75% of people voted for it. That's pretty amazing. You know, that just shows that it's without regard to party. People want fairness, you know?
Yeah.
So I can't tell if David and Aaron are there or if they just didn't log off whenever they.
No, I'm here.
Oh, okay, great. Hi, glad you're here. You live in Kentucky, right?
No, we're in.
Oh no, you're in Ohio. Okay, all right, all right. Well, was this all news to you, or had you been following it already?
No, I'm not a citizen. I do. I try to keep aware of the various, I don't know, political events that are going on, and obviously following the census last year. You know, I'm aware of the process to redistrict or to redraw the congressional districts. But redistricting, I'm not technically affiliated to either party, and I don't vote. I'm not a citizen, like I said, but it's an effort it maybe goes to the heart of some issues in this country. You're polarized by virtue of having two parties, a two-party system that I think limits political discourse. And don't get me wrong, I grew up in Ireland, and you just have to look to the north as an example of, efforts to suppress or to put down a large minority of a population. And there was multiple parties there, but I think the driving force was more religion, well, economics, but certainly religion to the forefront. But I do think that the two-party system in some respects hurts this country, because you always have just that duality of one opposing the other. And unfortunately, like a lot of countries, it's about power. It's about control. And there have been some. I know that North Carolina, was it 2019, engaged in a nonpartisan redistricting process that I think was somewhat successful, though there was a lot of back and forth with, I think it was the state Supreme Court, but I think they did land on a pretty, I think, relatively balanced and relatively fair redrawing. But it's a problem, and the country's getting even more polarized in some respects. So these processes are difficult.
Yeah, it is. There's many layers or complexities to it, isn't there? Aren't there? I'm just so impressed by the ways in which the amendment to the Constitution in Ohio has really set up a process. It sounds like there's still an out, that if the Republicans if one party, I'll frame it broadly, one party chooses to resist, ultimately something happens that's just a temporary plan, and you're sort of stuck in this continuing effort. But at least there's some steps laid out that I wasn't aware of, because I live in Kentucky, so I haven't paid that much attention. I knew they'd passed an amendment, but I'm just glad that the people spoke and said, we want fair maps, we want fair districts, and that conveys a message. Whether the deciders will pay attention to that message is another thing, but at least it's a clear message. 75% of the people voting for it. How long have you been in the U.S., David?
Since 2003.
Okay. Oh.
So been through some interesting times while living here. Certainly.
Yeah. I think I heard something the other day about changes in Northern Ireland that are being considered I can't remember. I didn't pay that much attention to it, but
yeah, there's
having to do with Northern Ireland being a part of Ireland instead of its own country. Am I making that up?
no, there's so back in the 90s, I think it was 99, there was a peace plan essentially signed into the law.
Yeah.
And it set up some different sort of power sharing. I think they called it the power sharing executive between, the varying political groups in the North. And look, it had some successes, some failures, but I think in the main sort of moved the region in the right direction. I mean, look, it's a generational thing, right? You gotta sort of take the violence out of society. That's not something that's going to happen overnight. It takes time. But I think it did move things in the right direction. But what's challenged the sort of status quo there has been this the decision in the UK to withdraw from its position or its status within the European Union.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's what's promoting some kind of change.
Yeah, because within that agreement in 1999, I don't know, it's quite a complex look. It's a legal document. I'm not a lawyer, but components of it set up cross-border initiatives between the south of Ireland and the north.
Okay.
And those are obviously conditions of this agreement set up in 1999. But in stepping out of the European Union, and obviously with the North still being part of the UK, coming out of the European Union sort of impacts those agreements, because obviously the south of Ireland is still part of the European Union and a big component of it. So, there are concerns that it'll descend into violence again, and there are groups there that are actively looking to sort of stoke that and create that, because look, behind the politics and behind the partisan religious elements, there was also criminality, right? You've got that sort of environment, and criminals prosper, and they want to see some of those days return for their own benefit. So it's a complicated situation. Hopefully they can find a path, because I think the people of Northern Ireland have had to deal with some horrible situations and circumstances for a long time, and they deserve prosperity and peace.
Yeah. Yeah, your comment about it being generational is really interesting, to think that over time, the later generations will leave behind some of the historic animosity based on factors that aren't relevant, aren't predominant for them now. That's kind of a hopeful notion. I haven't thought about it in that way. I could see that in part because of the fact that so much in that area has been shaped by religious affiliation, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Catholic nationalists and Protestant unionists, you've got that sort of dividing line there.
Yeah.
And that's dominated the politics and the cultural sort of identities that exist there for probably going back to plantations in the 1600s, when the British wanted to move in settlers that were pro the crown and pro the United Kingdom, and push off the people who lived there, who would obviously be would be pro the existing sort of how should I say, structures that would have been placed in Ireland, because Ireland then wasn't the country we know now, right? It was a more tribal sort of regional area with provinces, and then obviously the country came into being technically early in the last century, and then established as a republic just after World War II.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that short ago. Wow.
But technically, you know, statehood, but as a, you know, as a culture, as a sort of it's existed for thousands of years.
Right, right. With its own unique culture.
Yeah, but you know, like any other country, you kind of go there and you break it down, and you know, you get regional variances, regional, you know, it's like anything else. You peel away the layers and you find nuances and differences, even within something that you see as sort of whole and one identity. There's multiple identities.
Yeah.
And differences.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I wonder how the decline of the Catholic Church that I read about in the Inquirer today, how the number of Catholics attending or participating is decreasing enough that they're having to combine more parishes and stuff in Cincinnati. And I wonder if some of that is happening in Ireland, if the church is losing some of its hold on the cultural context there, or if that hasn't shifted at all. Speaking as someone who grew up Catholic here, so I'll full transparency, but you know.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm from the South, so you know, it's the South of Ireland is broadly speaking Catholic. I mean, when I was growing up, it was just I won't say it was a theocracy, but it was about as close to a theocracy as you could
yeah,
as you could have. You know, certain political parties, obviously, if you wanted to get anywhere, you had to have the buy-in of the church, and the local parishes and the priests and the bishops had huge power to influence decision and policy. But that started to change probably in the 80s and early 90s. Obviously, look, there's a lot of publicity and media attention, and rightly so, on various, you know, incidents in the Catholic Church and their efforts to suppress them and you know, but I think there, you know, people, I think to a large extent, sort of got tired of their influence, and it became very transparent what, you know, their efforts were trying to do. You had a lot of people, even when I was growing up, leave Ireland and go to other countries in Europe. A lot went to the UK, to England. And I won't say all of them, but I'd say a certain percentage of them left because of their maybe their sexuality. You know, they wouldn't have felt comfortable living in Ireland because they were, you know, they were homosexual, and they would feel very much ostracized by society and the church.
Right. Sort of like how in this country people moved to the urban areas during the past century for that very reason, you know, from rural to urban.
Exactly.
You know. Yeah.
Exactly. So that slowly eroded, and certain women's issues in the church as well, and their control over, you know, that, and certain cases getting publicity, and people realizing that just their hold over public discourse and policy was just, it was disproportional. They shouldn't have had that. So it's really eroded, as I said, kind of control and influence, to the point where I think Ireland was probably the first country to sort of legalize and recognize same-sex marriage.
Yeah, it was very early on, if not the first. It was very early on, yeah. Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I was going to say the EU, when Ireland joined the EU, I think a lot of change happened. My family, I have family in Ireland, and we went there after that. I've been there a couple times, and they were joking about that after the EU, they didn't know what to do because people were coming to Ireland. No one ever came to Ireland. They didn't. They only knew how to get people to leave Ireland. And so there was the sudden immigration of people in, and seeing it before EU and after EU, I mean, with so much more diversity. I mean, before EU, there was no diversity, really. I mean, it was really kind of mind blowing going to Dublin pre and post EU.
No, that's a very relevant point. I think, you know, as you said, the only people that came to Ireland prior to the EU really were coming to ransack and to pillage and take over.
Yeah.
But yeah, it changed so much. I mean, there was funding for education and infrastructure and jobs and employment. And to your point, brought, you know, foreign investment in the you know, US multinationals came. A very, how should I say, pro-business tax environment, I'm sure helped that as well. But it brought in other people, other perspectives, and yeah, it broke that stranglehold that the church, that the church did have over the country.
Yeah. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, because my cousins were already kind of saying, you know, when their daughters got to a certain age, whether we would help them find jobs in the US. But by the time my cousins' daughters grew up, you know, the EU had come, so they didn't need our help to find jobs for them.
Wow, that's pretty amazing change, isn't it?
It really was.
I think it goes to the heart of, you know, when, look, has everything been a success in relation to the European Union? No, but you look at Europe after the Second World War, you know, all right, it broke up empires, which I guess maybe is the only positive out of World War I and World War II. It broke the you know, those large European empires up, but it also just caused chaos. But it created, you know, it started with the help of the US, you know, the Marshall Plan, things like that. You had sort of the idea that, look, if we can build economic bridges and interconnectivity between different countries, they're less likely to look to create conflict because there's an interdependency.
Yeah. It's more this instead of this. Huh?
Exactly. And that has been in the main a very positive thing. And it's a shame to see. I look at the UK, and you know, I have many friends I went to college with that went there and brought their skills there, and to see the efforts of people to, and it's in my opinion, and look, maybe people have another sort of thought on it, but to break that up and to pull the UK out, I can't see any benefit to it, save for sort of the dark old, you know, fear mongering and fear of outsiders and fear of immigrants and old nationalistic sort of tropes. It's a step backwards. That, you know, it exists in Europe. You're always going to have it there. But I just think, you know, the two largest conflicts over the last 100 years originated in Europe. The European Union emerging after World War II has seen a relatively settled European Union when, you know, 100 years earlier, it was the largest source of conflict on the planet. Europe was always fighting the French, the Germans, the Russians, Italians. They were just constant conflict in Europe. And European Union helped to sort of, well, I won't say prevent it. There was obviously, you know, issues in the Balkans and things like that, but largely prevented and be a positive influence over that part of Eurasia.
Yeah. If you think about what the United States would have been like if it wasn't United States, and if each state was its own individual country, and how, I mean, in a sense, that would be sort of parallel to Europe before the European Union, you know, relatively small countries button up against each other for, you know, centuries.
Potentially, yes. Yeah. I mean, you had your Civil War, which was, you know, a group sort of the Confederate States sort of breaking away and wanting to do their own thing. And, you know, that's sort of been the dominant I mean, it still exists today in US politics and sort of belief structures.
Mm-hmm.
As someone coming in from outside, it's crazy to see certain sort of, you know, it's funny talking like this because I'll be completely honest with you. There was a saying in Ireland when you grew up, you don't talk religion and politics.
Right.
Certainly not in a pub. Well, I suppose that's the only difference. We're not in a pub.
Yeah, don't talk religion and politics, and yeah, and a pub that could get you in trouble, couldn't it?
Except
Yeah.
at the dinner table or at the pub, because at least in my family.
No,
Oh, you did
absolutely,
talk
yeah.
about it at the dinner table in the pub, huh?
Oh my goodness, yeah, for sure. I had a very Irish family. There was always politics. But it was, but because of, having been raised Irish Catholic, and there wasn't the freedom. I think that, had a lot of cousins that went into law just because you could then actually legally support and advocate for people. It was at least for my Irish relatives, that was a real plus and a real gift. But there's a lot of interesting discussions, which is good.
Well, I grew up in a town of 30,000 people where at least half of them were Catholic and most were German Catholic background, myself included mostly. And the world was divided into, and I grew up Catholic school, kindergarten through high school. And the world was kind of divided into Catholics and non-Catholics. I mean, that was how we talked about it. I was in college before I realized how bizarre that was. To divide the world simply Catholic and non-Catholic, and then I went to college, I went to graduate school. I got a job at a place that was created by the Mennonite Mental Health Association, umbrella group of all the different Mennonite denominations and sub-denominations. And lo and behold, they talked about Mennonites and non-Mennonites. And I was a non-Mennonite in that context coming in, and they asked me in my interview, was I prepared for working in a setting that was predominantly, of a particular faith tradition. And I thought to myself, I know how to do this. I know this Catholic, non-Catholic, this Mennonite, in-group, out-group.
Yeah.
And it wasn't my own history that I was having to muddle through. It wasn't like I was going to work at a Catholic institution and it would have to assert that I was non-Catholic or figure that out, So I didn't have any emotional reactivity about Mennonites. One could have, but I didn't have any. So that was not too difficult for me. And I just sort of embraced being non-Mennonite in that setting, and appreciated having learned that in-group, out-group culture perspective from my childhood. So.
It was kind of funny. My dad, he said there were two groups of people. There were those that were Irish and those that wanted to be Irish. and I believed him, so I was embarrassingly old, So, I was cool. I'm in. I was in, man. All the rest he said that's why there was St. Patrick's Day, because everyone wanted to be Irish. He had the evidence,
Yeah, so. That's right. Everybody wears green on that day, whether they're Irish or not.
I know. I mean, it's like, okay.
That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
That makes me think of that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
It was. That's what made me laugh when I saw that. When I watched that movie, I was like, yeah. That is so much my dad, a different ethnicity, but I was right there.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It's just so interesting how you grow up in that. And of course, until you're older, you don't experience something.
It's pretty absurd.
And when it's pretty benign, that's all right, or even nurturing of one's good self-confidence. In your case, Anne, you were.
I was in, man.
But it also shows how whatever culture children grow up in is a culture that, they don't fully know what it is until after they've left it or grown, old enough to look back at it. And and
It's
how
not all good, but it is
encompassing that
funny.
is.
Oh my goodness.
Well, fun conversation.
Yeah.
I appreciate visiting with you, David, and learning more
Yeah.
about your perspectives and background, and that's always good, and it's nice to take time to do that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, I am going to check out here and go see about making some brunch. Kathy's on her way home from church at this point, I think, because she had to go to church because she was counting money today. Now, just to be clear, when you're president of the board, you're not automatically a money counter. That just happens that was one of her previous volunteer jobs that they still need her for, and she's president of the board right now. I don't know if that's a conflict of interest. She's counting those dollar bills, and she's responsible for the authority with the board. But anyway, she's on her way home, and we have during this COVID time developed a little tradition that we have breakfast after church. We have bacon and eggs and toast, or toast and an omelet or something. We have eggs on Sunday after church. So I'm going to get the bacon frying, so it'll be ready for her whenever she gets home, and look forward to spending time with you all again soon.
Yeah.
Have a good week.
Yeah, same with y'all.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.